everybody. I'm David Bloom, and delighted to be here. We have a very different set of conversations from robotics. In fact, this is the opposite of robotic. It's about how do we create tools that enable even more creativity than the world already has. We have Mikayael is with a company called Picsart that's been around since 2011, helping take still images back in the day for MySpace pages, and now so much more. And Hanno has been a senior technology guy within creative companies like Digital Domain and DirecTV and Fox, as well as this little startup called Microsoft on their Azure side, but helping enable media and entertainment. So they come from a perspective of using technology to help create more cool stuff. And I think as a person who aspires to be creative someday, I'm strongly in support of this. So let's start. Mikayael, let's talk a little bit about being an old school Android mobile phone app to where you all are now, and all kinds of expressions, trying to get into enterprise, not enterprise, but small business, and all that, and what you all bring to the table in terms of creativity as AI can help inform it going forward.
Yeah, thank you, David. Hi, all. So, yeah, we, as have been mentioned, we have started in 2011. At that time, we were one of the first Android mobile photo editing applications, which then keep evolving into multiple platforms, multiple use cases, including the community, including the UGC content, how we call it, contributed by our users over the years. And throughout all over those years, our vision was to make creativity accessible to everyone, even to non-professionals. And all the technology which was introduced during those years, we were just using, and it was letting us to move one step forward to make this accessibility to a much broader audience.
So now it's not user-generated content, it's everybody-generated content.
Yeah, and it's the same.
It's EGC from now on, right?
Exactly. We see that Gen AI was another step forward into making the creativity accessible, especially for people who need this initial boost, inspiration, and it's not usually easy to start from something. So we saw that it's another opportunity to make this initial start easier for people, but then keep them evolving and keep them editing the stuff after it was generated.
Now, Hanno, your company comes from the other direction. Mm-hmm. Stability.ai is, or Stability AI, but I think it's Stability.ai, right?
Stability AI.
Yeah, so Stability is working with enterprises, big companies, trying to enable them to do the kinds of big projects that they've got to get done on a practically daily basis, right? So talk a little bit about how you enable creativity in organizations that aren't always thought of. They usually used to outsource it. They still do in some cases, but that's causing challenges in the creative industries like marketing agencies and all the like. But now the companies themselves are doing it, and you all help enable that.
Yeah, I think this stems from the thought that every person is creative, right? Everybody has creative ideas, they can imagine things, but a lot of people kind of lack the dexterity or the tools or the skill to take that creativity or that imagination and turn it into something, tangible, like an image or something like that. And I think generative AI in general really solves that problem in a big way. So for example, if you're a marketing executive at a large company and you have, let's say, a consumer product and you want to figure out how to position that in the market, you have that in your head, what you think this needs to look like, or you have like 5 different alternatives that you want to look at, but you're not necessarily an image artist or a photographer or somebody like that. Then you have to go find somebody, tell them what your vision is, and then basically have them implement it. And then a week or two later, you get it back, and then you figure out this is not what you wanted.
You're trying to accelerate that process.
With generative AI, you can basically do that yourself very, very quickly, get very close to what you want, and then you can still give it, hand it over to a professional artist to then turn that into reality. So what we see a lot with generative AI and image generation especially is this ideation process.
So that's important. So it may get the ball rolling, and I think you're saying the same thing, Mikayael, that it's actually, it gets you 75% down the road, and then you finish it off with like human creativity on the back end as you kind of narrow this down.
Yeah, but it's also, and I come from the film industry. If you look at this, like filmmaking, like the ideation, the creative spark, that's one thing, but then making that a reality is a totally different thing.
That's the next 4 years of development.
Exactly. So, I mean, if you, let's say, like a Marvel movie, Avengers or something like that, that's easily a $250 million budget. Most of that budget is in human labor. And the human labor is not all that creative. There is creative aspects to it in animation, in modeling, and in acting, obviously, and that sort of thing. But there's also a lot of work there just to make it look right, or to remove, artificial stuff like there's a boom mic in the shot, or you shot a stunt actor in a wire harness and you have to remove that. Those types of tasks are not very creative, but they need to be done. And those are really things that we think we can accelerate with generative AI.
So, Mikayael, you guys have operated around the globe for a long time. Hanno, you're German, based in Santa Monica, which is not German. Your company's based in London. I'd love to hear some. As I mentioned backstage, the famous line from William Gibson that the future's already here, it's just unevenly distributed. Where are we seeing these AI applications being used in significant ways, and where are the areas around the world that you see are still catching up? I'd like to hear some international perspective a little bit on this. I don't hear it enough out here, this great show otherwise.
Yeah, I think very similar to our product. Like when we have started, we have seen that there was big, broad audience in different countries utilizing it completely in a different ways. So some of them were using, let's say in Japan, they were mostly focusing on drawing tools. In other countries, they were mostly like filters and other stuff. Then other things were done a bit differently. So we saw that depending on the maturity of the and culture of the country and the people, their behaviors and their usage is different compared to all other countries. The same I see with this Gen AI deployment and applicability in different verticals, in different industries. In certain countries it's more advanced than in others, and because of the culture, because of people being ready to accommodate it and being ready to understand it, how it can help them to do something much more efficient.
Where are you seeing those places of unevenness? Particularly, they're doing well. I'm going to guess Japan, because of course that's actually not the present, it's the future in pop culture and technology uptake. It always feels like. I would presume it's one of those ones playing hard in this space. Where else are you seeing some of that?
I see that overall it's now being utilized everywhere, just depending on the tool set and depending how deep people are using it in their daily lives.
Sure.
So for example, even taking in our different offices, the same product is being used in one office but not in other office mostly. So people are utilizing it differently even across our offices. Let's say London versus Yerevan versus Berlin office. And that's why we see it's not even because it's not available in that country or because of the cost associated with it. It's because of how people perceive it in that particular geo, and I believe it's also a lot of cultural elements, because we have noticed that every technology, everything is very culture specific, especially in Asian countries,
right.
And it takes time to get there.
Okay. Hanno, talk a little bit about, with your enterprise approach, are there sectors of the economy in portions of the world where they need to catch up? areas where you're seeing less utilization? I mean, I think this is, in a lot of cases, it's very context specific and culturally specific in some ways, it sounds like.
Yeah, it depends a little bit on what you're trying to do. So, for example, with image generation and also video, a lot of these models, including our model family, Stable Diffusion, famously has been available open source from the very beginning. So that actually allows people from all over the world to utilize this technology. So Stable Diffusion is available open source, and also it comes typically in different form factors, and one form factor always fits on consumer hardware. So you can run Stable Diffusion 3.5, the medium model, for example, on a laptop, no problem. And so that makes it actually really accessible, and we have a lot of usage around the world that way. I think where this becomes a problem is in two ways. One is we're really, and our researcher base and our workforce in general is actually really globally distributed, so this helps us quite a bit, because you have to make sure that in your training data set you have enough global coverage and enough cultural coverage and so on, that you really have that diversity in your data set. So that, for example, if you're, so one example that we're using is if you prompt for a doctor, for example, that you don't get a bunch of older white guys, but you actually get male, female with different ethnic background, and so we were paying quite a bit of attention to that and not overfit in one or the other direction. But then the bigger hurdle that we actually still see is with language comprehension. So by far, language comprehension by far is the best in English, right? Kind of followed by Mandarin Chinese, by the way, because obviously there's also a lot of push in.
A lot of users.
A lot of government support of AI in China, and so that's kind of the second. But beyond that, it drops off pretty dramatically in the other languages to really, in terms of world knowledge, in terms of the things you can do. So if you're not a native English speaker and you really want something useful, it's much tougher.
Much tougher.
I have a colleague in Japan, and he keeps talking about how the Japanese version of ChatGPT is a lot dumber than the English version, and the same is true for the German version.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because at least 2/3 of this panel is from Santa Monica, I would be remiss and has covered the business of Hollywood in one way or another for a very long time. I'm curious about how you see the big creative companies that have dominated the cultural conversation for a century, how this is playing out. AI was the big bugaboo in the two strikes, writer and actors strikes in 2023 that shut down Hollywood.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, somebody like Netflix has got 40 production centers around the world, making films in lots and lots of places like Squid Game. They've become hugely successful around the world.
Yeah.
I'm curious about how you see AI's tools, adoption, openness, now 2 years or a year and a half after the end of those strikes, and what that means for Hollywood and where it goes. And I'll start with you, Hanno, but I also want to hear from you, Mikayael, on these old line creative industries and how they're dealing with all this.
Yeah. So make no mistake, AI is here to stay, and I think AI is going to be utilized in content production pervasively at some point, but probably not in the way that people think. So I don't see a world where you have a script, let's say, and that script was written by a large language model, and you feed that into a video generation model, and you get a movie. I don't think that's ever going to happen, and the simple reason for that is nobody wants to watch a movie like that was made like that. We still, we're human beings. We relate to stories that are being told to us by other human beings. AI wasn't born, didn't have, a dysfunctional, functional family.
It's usually a dysfunctional family in Hollywood. Otherwise, it's not funny, right? I mean,
exactly. Didn't get their heart broken by a stupid girl in 11th grade or whatever. So, AI has never gone through this, and so it cannot generate, really stories that it can repeat, right? It can can do that, but it can't really genuinely come up with something.
It does beg a question, can you break the heart of AI?
I don't know, we'll see.
We'll see.
but I think the point is, I think AI is going to be used a lot as a tool. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of human labor in making TV shows and movies. And if we can actually just cut that human labor in half, and we're really talking about the grunt work, the stupid stuff that, James Cameron is a board member of Stability. He talks about this mind-numbing work that needs to be done. Like Avatar 2 took 4 years to make. If we can shrink that down to 2 years, Jim is still going to be in control over every aspect of the movie making. There's still going to be a ton of people employed by making this movie, but we're going to be able to make it faster and for less money, and that's good for the studio. That's actually also good for the audience because it means Jim can make more movies.
Right.
I mean, he basically is committed to making 3 more Avatar movies, and he doesn't have time for anything else because it takes so long to make each one of them. And we hear this from filmmakers across the board. They have these creative ideas, they know what to do, and now they have to wait 3 weeks for the visual effects vendor to come back with the shot.
Right.
And if we can bring that down to a week, that's a game changer for the industry. And that's all we're trying to do, right?
Okay.
We're not trying to take the, like the other day I was talking to a filmmaker, he's like a 3-time Oscar winner, so really somebody who knows what they're talking about. And I was just showing him how our tool set worked. And pretty quickly it became really apparent that like the first shot, or even the first 5 shots, with a text prompt, you create an image that he's not getting what he wants to get. And then you need to start thinking about and iterating on this image. So you have to be able to edit, like for example, we had like some farm animals out there, and you said, "Oh, replace the cows with sheep." And I just said, "Replace the cows with sheep." Oh no, not those cows, only these cows.
Only these cows,
before
right.
you know it, you have to go in there and edit and point and create really a complex tool set that allows this very pinpointed control. And that's what we're about, is, control is all you need.
Sure. So Mikayael, just to wrap us up, from your perspective, traditional creative industries have not been your target, but now there's an opportunity as the kids who started with you are growing up into decision makers. Where do those traditional creative industries go and the creative people within them?
Yeah, I think what we observed so far over those years, again, especially in our industry, there were growing demand for creative assets, and the supply was always falling behind. So, and now we see again with those tools, in this age when the demand for creative assets, especially in the digital world, is growing, Gen AI and all of this, on top of what have been produced so far, it will help to scale it further, and especially for the businesses, where the scale is completely different than just for day-to-day consumer. So that's why I see that, we have been growing since Gen Z was very young. Now we see those Gen Z guys are opening their businesses, starting to grow their enterprises, and we see that without this, it's really hard to catch up with this demand and provide them a way to
Right.
scale this generation.
Okay.
That's why I do not see that it's either or. They will coexist, and it's a matter of scaling. It will help us scale it faster and better and be much more efficient than we have been previously.
Great. Well, with that, we're going to wrap it up. Give these guys a big hand. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you.